Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. This is part 2 of our video of why you need a DSP. So every bike we do here at the shop gets a DSP. It's non-optional for us. It just makes making these bikes sound right, makes it so much easier, and it's just such a powerful tool. And it's not fair that shops are making it optional. It really shouldn't be optional. And then parts have come down and cost so much. You can get a really good DSP for $300. When I first started in the game back in the 90s, the only powerful DSP, well, one of the only ones I had access to, was the Rockford Symmetry. And it was way over $1,000, and it was so hard to use and so confusing, and it was so far above my pay grade. Now the Rockford DSR1 is more powerful than the Rockford Symmetry, and it's $300. So there's even $200 DSPs on the market. So there's no excuse for not using one. It's the cost of speakers and amplifiers have come down so much. I remember I was just talking to a tech friend of mine, and I remember when customers used to spend $3,000 on a flip out screen with navigation. Used to spend $1,200 on a 400 watt amplifier. Now power is so cheap, there is no excuse for not spending the money on a processor. That way every speaker on the vehicle can get the frequency that it wants. Your tweeters can get their high pass frequency, your mid bass drivers can actually get mid bass and blocks off the tweeter end and blocks off the bass end. Your subwoofers, especially in saddlebags, can get bandpassed, because in a bike you cannot put a 5 cubic foot enclosure and get the woofer to play down to 20 hertz. It's just not happening. So how about we put a woofer in the bag that if it wants to play down to 45 hertz, you let it play to 45 hertz, and if it wants to play up to 500 hertz, you stop it at 500 hertz. So I spent a few hours doing some research trying to simplify it the most I could, because we can go on talking for hours about acoustic theory. I'm trying to make it simple so everybody can understand the basics. So I've downloaded some charts from the popular speaker manufacturers that everybody's using on these Harley motorcycles, so everybody can see the frequency response graph supplied by the manufacturer, how their speakers play, and this is free air. This is before you put them in a saddlebag or before you put them in a speaker pod, how the speaker naturally wants to play and what the speaker does. So the issue with not using a DSP and just installing the speaker and hooking it up to an amplifier and just turning it up is every speaker wants to do its own thing. It naturally plays louder at certain frequencies and lower at certain frequencies. So then when you add multiple speakers all doing whatever the heck they want, you don't end up with the best sound possible. So with the DSP, you can actually manipulate the sound and add where the speaker's lacking and subtract where the speaker is actually playing too loud. Then another problem that we have on motorcycles, tweeters play by themselves, subwoofers play by themselves. The other problem is when you use 8-inch mid-bass drivers and 6-inch mid-range drivers and 6x9s, all these speakers share overlapping frequencies. For example, all 3 different sizes that I just mentioned all play 200 hertz. So if you put 8 speakers on a bike that all play 200 hertz, then obviously 200 hertz is going to be too loud, because you have a theoretical plus 3 dB from the first 6x9, then adding the second 6x9, then adding the 6.5, then adding the other 6.5, then adding the 8s. So each one of these speakers naturally plays 200 hertz easily within the middle of their band, which means on the RTA screen and graph you're going to have too much energy at 200 hertz because you have 6 drivers playing the same frequency. Now when you add in the subs play lower so they don't overlap. When you add in the tweeters play higher so they don't overlap. Where you have the problem is in the mid-range, mid-bass frequency, you have way too much overlap. So with an RTA, you could see where there's too much energy and go in and naturally subtract it. It's simple math. So I'm going to go to some of these charts and show you what I've been looking at. Another issue we have is a lot of customers ask us, what is the best 6.5? What is the best speaker? What is the best this? What is the best? It's actually an impossible question to answer. It's like asking, what's the best car? Mercedes makes a $100,000 car. BMW makes a $100,000 car. At the end of the day, if you spend $100,000 on a car, it's going to come down to preference. It's come down to styling, the interior choices. So it's not which car is better. It's which car works better for you, which car designed better for you, which car are you most comfortable with. Speakers are the same way. Speakers have different characteristics. For example, we are a huge Audison Hertz dealer. Focal makes quality product, and they each make a speaker that's $1,000. I think, my personal preference, I think that the Focal tweeter is very aggressive. And I think that the Hertz tweeter and the Audison tweeter is much more laid back. So I prefer the sound of the Hertz Audison tweeter. Some people prefer the sound of the Focal tweeter. It's not a question about price because they cost the same. It's not a question about quality because they're both the same quality. Experience that we had when we were a Morel dealer. Audison and Hertz make a 3-inch dome mid-range. Morel makes a Audison and Hertz make a 3-inch cone mid-range. Morel makes a 3-inch dome mid-range. I've listened to a cone speaker my entire career, and for me, the dome mid-range just sounded strange. It didn't sound bad. On the RTA, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It had excellent frequency response. It just sounded like a giant tweeter to me that played low, and that's what it's designed to do. I wasn't comfortable with the sound because I wasn't used to it. It's not that there's a problem with the quality of the speaker, and vice versa. We've had customers where we've done cone mid-range and they made us swap it out to a dome mid-range because they like the sound better. It comes down to preference. So it's not what's the best speaker, it's which speaker is going to work the best in your application. So many times I've seen somebody put a speaker in and then take it out and say that speaker's a piece of crap. Put another speaker in, take it out and say that speaker's a piece of crap. Take another speaker and put it in like, oh, that's the one. It's because you weren't tuning, you weren't using a DSP, you weren't using an RTA, so you couldn't tailor that speaker to sound the way you wanted it to sound. But you got lucky and found a speaker that happened to play well and have a flat response in that enclosure. So you can go around it, you can go about it that way and try 300 speakers till you find one that works without EQing or tuning. But does that really make sense? So, I'm going to go over a couple of charts so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so what we have here on the screen, in red, we have subwoofer. In blue, we have a mid-range driver. In green, we have a tweeter. So now, this is free air, regular frequency response with no crossover applied, with no EQ applied. So as you could tell, we have a problem here where the tweeter and the mid-range come together. We have a problem here where we have a giant drop, then a huge peak. But see, a subwoofer is not designed to play all the way up to here. So with a DSP, I would cut this woofer here or here. And then we have almost no energy here at 10 Hertz. So I would cut it somewhere around here. So I would let it play from here to here and EQ the rest. The same thing with the mid-range. We have a giant dip here, and then it completely falls off here. Plus, we don't need it to play there because our tweeter's playing there. So I'd cross this over somewhere around there, and then where it starts to drop off here, I have the subwoofer handling all this duty, so I don't need the mid-range, so I would cut it off there. So I would set my crossover point for the sub here, here, my mid-range here, here, and my tweeter here, and here. So after applying the proper crossover points, we can EQ everything out to get a flat, natural response. That's something you cannot do without a DSP. So without a DSP, once you hook it up, that's all you get. And then you can raise the gain, which would bring the green line up or down, the blue line up or down, and the red line up or down. But without a DSP, that's about as much control as you're going to get. So then, another thing you have to be careful of is the higher end companies offer graph. So some of the companies I'm going to show you, they'll show you the top graph, but they won't show you the bottom. The reason the bottom graph is important is this is the impedance of the speaker while it's playing. So once the impedance rises like this, you have to be careful because that means the impedance goes way up, which means the amplifier puts out almost no power at that frequency. So you have to see not only what the speaker's doing here, but what it's doing here. That way you can properly tune it. This is a graph that I got off of Hertz's website, and it also shows you on and off axis response. The reason that's important on, let's say, Harley-Davidson This would be the tweeters playing down below the radio on a newer Road Glide, and this would be the tweeters mounted in the grill. So as you could tell, the speaker is going to sound completely different whether it's off axis or on axis. You have to take that into account as you're doing system design and tuning. So we're going to start with the new Euphoria. This is the Euphoria 8X10 Neo MB. So they list frequency response of 45 hertz to 2000 hertz. So when you go over to the graph, see, I don't know why, but they didn't include an impedance graph. But when you go over to the graph, speaker plays really good from 45, 50 hertz, and we don't see any drop till we get to about 3K. So now, that's all fine and dandy. I don't want my 10-inch mid-bass driver playing tweeter frequency, so I wouldn't let it play that high, and I'd like to see the impedance graph to see what the speaker does up around there. So I would naturally cross it over from, I'm fine with 45 because that's normal there, so I would cross it over from 45 to, let's say, 500. Even though the speaker can play up here, it's probably going to sound kind of funny trying to get voice out of a 10-inch mid-bass driver. So me personally, I would cross this speaker over at 45 hertz to 500 hertz in a saddlebag, but you can go as high as 1000 without an issue, because that would be right here. As you notice, the graph's still going up and we don't start to drop to around here. So I would feel comfortable at 500. Some people I could see tuning it at 1000. There's nothing wrong with that. That comes down to preference. Next is the new Bema. This is the new Bema Power 10iX. So according to everybody in the Harley forums, the Bema and the Euphoria, the two big dog mid-bass drivers, they are the be-all, end-all. It's a really good woofer. It's made by a quality company, so they cost about the same. They're both about 400 bucks. There's the Bema graph. I like the fact that they included a impedance graph. Bema claims a frequency response of 40 hertz to 3.5K. So 40 hertz would be right around here. So obviously when the impedance goes way up, they want it to be crossed over in front of that. That makes sense. And then the impedance starts rising up again right around 3K. So that's why they're telling you that the speaker can actually play from here to here, because when an impedance rises all the way up here, we'll have almost no output. So once again, I personally would cross it over 40 hertz to 500 hertz, but there's absolutely nothing wrong going 40 to 1000. So I would cross it over around here. Some people cross it over here, which is fine. I would just stay away from anything higher than this, because as you can see, it's all downhill from there. And here the speaker's playing nice and smooth. Funny things start to happen here, and there's the on and off access, so it plays really similar until you get to the upper end. If you notice, the lines are right over each other on and off access until you get around to about 1K. So I would cross the speaker over 40 to 500 or 40 to 1000. Ground Zero GZCK 250 XPL. Falls right in the same price point. I've seen some websites discounted, but retail price was right around $400. They have a listed frequency response of 40 to 6K. I couldn't find a graph on the Ground Zero, but I'm assuming it's going to be very similar to the Bema and very similar to the Euphoria. I don't think it would be fair to compare this to either of the other two drivers, because this cannot handle the power that the other two drivers can. It has nothing to do with the quality of the speaker. It's a good sounding speaker. We've installed hundreds of them. Once again, it's a 10-inch mid-bass driver that we would use in the bag, so we would feel comfortable crossing it over about 50 to 500 hertz, maybe 50 to 1000. Never 6K like it claims. Just because it can do it doesn't mean you should do it. But I couldn't find a graph to go along with it, but I can't see the graph looking much different than the other two speakers. The reason this speaker cannot handle the powers because it's got a smaller voice coil. The Bema and the Euphoria have a much bigger voice coil, so of course there's no way the 250 XPL will be able to keep up power-wise. Sound-wise is a really good sounding speaker. All three speakers sound really good, but power-wise it just can't handle the power that the Bema and the Euphoria can handle. The PRV 6MR500 CF stands for carbon fiber, and DY stands for neodymium magnet. So here's the frequency response graph. It claims, this is a 6-inch speaker, it claims to have a frequency response from 95 to 11,000. So that makes sense if you look at the frequency response from the other drivers. This is a larger speaker, so it would play from 40 to 3K. So it would make sense that a smaller speaker with a lighter cone would play 95 to 11,000. So looking at this frequency response graph, we have nothing on the bottom end, which is completely fine because this is a 6-inch speaker that can't play bass. So we start to pick up around 100 hertz. And then we have a nice even response up. We get some funniness up around 1.5K. And then we have a large peak at 5,000, and then it's all downhill from there. So they're claiming 95 to 11,000 on this speaker. Me personally, I would cross this speaker over 150 or 200, and then on the top end where my tweeters begin, I'd cross it over around 3K. So then I don't have to deal with any of this. It would be from here to here. My personal opinion. But once again, you can't do any of this without a DSP. So in closing, DSP is all about control. The more control you have and the more you educate yourself, the better you can make everything sound. So ground zero DSP, yeah, the Bluetooth dongle, you control it from your phone, or you can stream music directly into the unit, and you could just completely bypass the head unit. Rockford DSR1, industry standard, DSP that's in 90% of the bikes out there because it came out first, and it's what everybody's used to, and it's what every company jumped on and supported and made all the harnesses for. There's at least 4 or 5 companies making plug-in harnesses for the DSR1. I don't care what DSP you choose. Obviously size matters. Hertz is coming out with a weather-resistant motorcycle DSP that's supposed to be super small. I'm super excited about that because DSP is one of the things that we struggle with because none of the DSPs that we use on bikes are designed to go on bikes. So some of the problems that we're plagued with, water damage, issues with vibration, loss of Bluetooth connectivity, turn on and off pops, that's because we're using something that's designed for a house or a car. We're using it on a bike, and it's not really what it's designed for. So I'm really excited for the Hertz DSP to come out. I think since the Hertz H8 is my personal favorite DSP to use whenever I can fit it, I'm hoping that they put all the same exact features into the motorcycle version of the DSP. Another DSP that I realized I didn't mention is the JL Audio Fix and Tweak. JL Audio is a very, very smart company. JL Audio does everything differently ever since they came out with the Slash series and the W7 subwoofers. They're such a smart company that they understand that the end user might not be a professional and doesn't understand how to do stuff properly. So they came out with one of the first amplifiers that adjusts rail voltage. So the 1000/1, if you hooked up one 4-ohm woofer, the amplifier gave you 1,000 watts. If you bought another woofer and hooked it up without knowing anything, the amplifier would self-adjust the rail voltage and give you 1,000 watts, even though the impedance just dropped from 4 ohms to 2 ohms. And you can do that all the way down to 1.5 ohms. Then, being the smart company that JL Audio is, they designed one of the most powerful subwoofers, one of the most popular subwoofers in its day, is the W7. Then they realized that everybody was going to want their subwoofer, so they gave it 3 ohm coils. The reason they gave it 3 ohm coils is if you wire 2 of them, you end up in 1.5 ohms, which is the minimum impedance that they designed their amplifier to work with. So this is what opened my eyes to JL Audio, and this is over a decade ago. I'm like, wow, this company is so smart that they designed it that if you use their woofer with their amplifiers, you got maximum power. If you use somebody else's subwoofers with their amplifier, you got maximum power. If you use JL Audio's woofer with somebody else's amplifier, you got 90% power, because the JL Audio 1000/1 was designed to give you full power into variable ohm loads from 4 ohms down to 1.5 ohms, which 2 W7s would give you, so you got maximum power. Now if you use their woofer with somebody else's amp, since it wasn't 1 ohm, it was 1.5, it gave you 90% of the power, so the JL Audio amp would always be a little bit louder. Very, very smart engineering, very smart marketing, and it made it stupid proof. So if the customer hooks up 1 woofer, it's loud. 2 woofers, louder. 3 woofers, even louder, without having to know series, parallel, impedance, none of that. So they did the same thing with their DSP. JL Audio came out with the Fix and the Tweak. So all of the best DSPs on the market have a price point around $1,000 that do the same thing that the Fix and the Tweak do. But they realized that a lot of people weren't going to spend $1,000 on a DSP, or that they would want to buy it a la carte. So what they did was they took a $1,000 DSP and broke it into 2 parts, and they came out with the Fix and the Tweak. So for example, if you're using an Artisan Bit 1 $1,000 DSP, it fixes the factory EQ curve and then allows you to tweak and adjust the output. So it's basically a Bit 1 split in half. So if you need to fix the factory EQ curve, like Harley-Davidson radio or a factory BMW or Mercedes, you use the Fix and it fixes the signal. Now if you have an aftermarket radio and you don't have to fix the signal, or you've had your radio flashed, then you would use the JL Audio Tweak. That way it has full DSP functions without the ability to fix or correct the factory signal. Super, super smart. JL Audio makes one of the best processors on the market. It's super powerful. It's not that user friendly. I only know how to use it because I went to training for it. And they are super smart company. They do things differently and it's working out really well for them. So if you have the training, or if you take the time to learn the software, the JL Audio Tweak is a very, very, very powerful DSP for motorcycles. It allows you to assign different EQs to different sets of speakers. It allows you to pick how you want to channel the input signal and output it to different. It's a very powerful DSP, and if you use them both together, then you can fix the factory Harley EQ curve and then output the signal via fiber optic cable from the Fix to the Tweak, and then go to your amplifiers from there. Super, super, super smart. You can buy one, then add second one later. JL Audio is a very smart company, so you'd expect nothing less from them. So in closing, I really don't care what DSP you use as long as you use one. If you don't have the money to purchase an RTA, use the RTA software that I recommended to you. You can get the free version. And if you need, the free version doesn't allow you to do certain things, but if you need higher resolution, then I think you pay $5 or $10 to unlock the rest of the version. The only thing you have to be careful of when you're using the phone-based RTAs is the microphone in the phone is very sensitive and can only take a certain amount of sound pressure level. So if you turn the stereo up on the bike really loud, it's just going to show you that everything is flat on the RTA when it's not, because what's happening is the pressure is actually bottoming out the microphone and it won't let it move, so it's going to give you false readings. So you can take accurate readings, but realize that it's going to be at moderate volume. So if you're using a free app on the phone and you notice that everything looks like it's flat, and no matter what you make, back down on the volume, and then you'll be able to see the differences. You can go on Amazon and get an external microphone, but if you're going to start spending money on microphones and stuff like that, then maybe you should look at a dedicated microphone app like the Audio Control. Audio Control makes one for iPhone and iPad where you just have to buy the microphone. It's under $200. It works really, really well, and that microphone can take full volume. And then I also recommend, if you're a shop, you can invest into the DMRTA from Audio Control. We have the DMRTA, we have the Artisan Bit Tune, we have 7 or 8 different RTAs in the shop. I like using the older Audio Control one because I don't need a laptop. It's simple. I have 3 of them in the shop. Just plug in the microphone. It does electrical and acoustic readings, so you can actually physically hook up to the amplifier outputs or directly to speaker outputs and see it on the screen, just adjust the scale, or plug in your microphone and listen to it that way. So I'm used to using it. It's rugged. It gets kicked around. I don't have to hook up a laptop. But sometimes I'll use more than one RTA on a car or a bike, and sometimes I'll use a DM-RTA. DM-RTA is awesome. It's got a built-in battery, so you can take quick readings. You can control it from your iPad, or you can use a laptop. It's got a built-in tone generator, so you can create signal directly from it, plug it into your bike, and it's got a phase detector. So phasing is a huge issue on a lot of these bikes. A lot of people keep throwing more speakers and amplifier power, not realizing that some of the speakers are out of phase, and that's why they're not getting the output that they want. But I don't care what you use or how you use it. Just get yourself a DSP and start playing around with it. Don't be scared of it. Starting tomorrow, the day after, I'm going to start the videos on how you install them and how you tune them step by step. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of the Rockford DSR1. We're going to do the Audison Bit 10. We're going to do the Hertz H8. We're going to do the Arc Audio PSM. We're going to do the Ground Zero DSP. We're going to do the Dayton DSP. We're going to do the Audio Dynamics DSP. So if there's anything I left off the list that you guys want to see, just shoot me an email or leave a comment on the video, and I'll see if I can add it to the list. Thank you. Have a good night. Hope this helps.